Hey everybody, so we have been talking about anger the last few days. And the reason for that is because we're in springtime right now, at least in the Pacific Northwest. And springtime energy is liver time in the Chinese medicine viewpoint of things. And great time to be doing cleansing the liver. But when liver energy starts to move, sometimes we can get in touch with anger that we didn't know, with stuck anger that we didn't know was in our nervous system and in our cells, right? And so I've been getting questions about, okay, great, so I know that I have anger, right? But what do I do about it? How do I move it in a way that is healthy, that is not going to harm anyone, that is not going to harm myself, or, bring more stress and trauma into my own nervous system, right? Because I think there's a lot of these kind of techniques out there, hit a pillow or scream, or and if we're not doing it in the right way, if we're pushing our nervous system outside of our window of tolerance or window of resilience by doing these practices, then it's actually not helpful, right? And I think a lot of us know that. We can feel it in our bodies when it doesn't feel right, when it doesn't feel helpful, when it feels like it's kind of like aggravating the aggravation even a little bit more, right? And so, so how do we work with anger in a way that is helpful, healthy, and ultimately leads to more freedom in our nervous systems and in our beings and in our relationships? So I'm going to show you a couple of really easy practices that you can do. And before I do, though, I want to say that there's a feeling, there's a feeling that you want to have when you're working with anger. And the only way that I can think of to describe it is if you think of like an electrical cord, right? Oh, lunch is ready. If you think of it like an electrical cord, and if that electrical cord doesn't have like insulation around it, then the electricity, when it tried to run through it, it would be like sparking off in every direction and like maybe even causing fires, and it wouldn't be good, right? And so when we're releasing anger in a way that is not great for our nervous system, and that is kind of like recapitulating the trauma and recapitulating the patterning, it can feel like that, like it's like sparks and like there's no kind of containment, right? And so being able to move, especially energy in our body, especially primal energy, being able to move it well, we want to have what we call in somatic therapy containment, right? We want to have a sense of containment. And so it's more like the feeling that you're going for is more like as though you have like a tube or a straw, and it's like pushing honey. It's like honey moving through the tube, right? Or if you think of an electrical cord again, it's like having that insulation around the cord so that the electricity goes where you're intending it to go, right? So I'm going to show you a couple of practices, and I just want you to kind of feel into the difference between those two feelings in your body as you play with these practices. So the first one, they're very similar actually, the two of them, but just two different, slightly different ways of doing it. So these are what I like to call my anger sticks, and we use them in retreats and grief ritual as part of the ritual process. But I also use them with one-on-one clients and for myself too. So these sticks, I don't use them for hitting anything or bashing them together, nothing like that. Actually, what they're for is for squeezing. And so these sticks, you can squeeze these sticks as hard as you want and they will not break. Now, partly that's because they're made of ironwood and not something more fragile like bamboo, but also partly that's because the force of squeezing on something round actually doesn't tend to break it usually. So what I'll do with these sticks is, just bring in a nice squeeze, and I want to notice, what's happening in my body as I squeeze the sticks, what's happening. And if you like, there may be a sound that comes with the squeeze, right? So there may be a sound that comes, but it's not necessarily going to be a scream. It might be, right? But I'm just going to feel into right now what my authentic sound is today. So as I feel the squeeze, I kind of just want to go like, Yeah, my dog is looking. He's like, why are you growling? Yeah, and because it feels good. That's why I'm growling, because it feels so good, Arlo. Yeah, it feels so good. So just a squeeze and a growl. Ugh. And it might even be like a groan or Yeah, and some days when I'm really feeling it, it might sound more like right? It might be more intense. And you can see how you can even see as I'm doing that, you can see it coming into my jaw, right? And this is very animal, this is very natural. We're in these animal bodies, and when we're expressing a boundary, when an animal is expressing a boundary or expressing, aggression, there is that that happens, right? It's a way that we show through our body this aggression. And so that's another thing that you can actually play with, is just, bringing in a little or not but you can pendulate back and forth between the and a right? So more opening the jaw. Do it with me. Yeah, you may feel a little silly at first. It's okay, right? It's okay to feel silly. And what we want to work with these practices is not like, oh, I feel so much better after doing that, right? But more like curiosity of like, what happens when I do that? You might feel better. You might feel like, oh, wow, actually the anger that's in there is way more than I even thought it was. And you might want to do it more. Now I want to show you, if you don't have sticks like these, or you're not going to make them, which, I really recommend them. But if you don't have access to those right now, and I learned this practice from Irene and Seth Lyons. So it's a tea towel, right? And so you just take a tea towel and you roll it up like this. You kind of twist it. And then, very similar to the stick, so you're just going to twist. And you can kind of, as you twist. Yeah, so there's something about engaging these muscles of the arms, right, the forearms, that actually really supports our nervous system to release that boundary energy, right? It's like these forearms are where we push from, where we create a boundary, where we find our no. So working with these arm muscles is really, really helpful to release just excess primal energy, excess aggression. Yeah, so that's a couple practices you can work with. So we had the sticks, the working with the jaw, the right? And then the tea towel. Now, you can do the while you're driving in your car, while you're, walking somewhere private-ish. You can do it in a lot of different places. So I invite you to, play with these practices, see how they work for you. Let me know in the comments how it is for you. And if you have any questions, then share them there as well. I'm happy to come back and respond. And if you're not on my mailing list yet, on my newsletter, I really recommend that you get on that, because I'm going to have a whole course releasing in June. We have a couple of really great groups already working with grief, trauma, anger, all the emotions. And we have a new course coming out in June. So that will be a whole bunch of different practical tools, somatic tools to support working with grief and trauma. So I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for watching. Go get on my mailing list. Link is in the bio, or if you're watching this on Facebook, it would be in the comments. Okay, blessings.